Welcome to Mission Majjhima. Ajahn.
Ajahn.
So tell us about Majjhima Nikaya 28, the Mahāhatthipadopama Sutta, discourse on the simile of elephant's footprint.
So in this sutta, we find Sāriputta doing what he does best, is actually showing the fractal or holographic nature of the Dhamma. He starts out telling the monks that just as the footprint of an elephant can contain all the other footprints of the animals that can walk in the jungle, so too the footprint of the Four Noble Truths can encompass all the teachings, all kusala dhammas, teachings or phenomenon that are wholesome. So to go more into this, we're going to do a screen sharing of a really nice website made by a monk named Khema Dhammika of Sasanaraka Monastery, who I haven't yet met, but he's created this great website called iDhamma, the interactive Dhamma guide, and we'll jump over there. And in the content structure, this is the overview. Just as Sāriputta is teaching the Four Noble Truths, we've got here these different zoomable dhammas. So First Noble Truths of suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation, and the path leading to the cessation, all just nested within one another. And what Sāriputta does, as this website does, is he begins by explaining the Four Noble Truths of suffering, the cause, cessation, and the path. And then he zooms in to the First Noble Truth and says that, as we see here, birth is dukkha, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, separation, and the five aggregates subject to clinging. Then we can zoom in here. And on this website, all of the quotes are not taken from the Mahāhatthipadopama Sutta. They're from all over the place. So you don't have to spend too much time reading the specifics. It's just this nested patterning, how we can click in and zoom out and see the recursive nature of the Dhamma. So the first aggregate is form. And what is specifically highlighted by Sāriputta is actually an aspect of form, which we view with mindfulness, the four foundations of mindfulness, looking in the body and looking at the four elements. So here we have internal earth element and external earth element, internal water element, external water element, internal fire, internal wind, external fire, external wind. And Sāriputta does a fascinating job that says whether it's internal or external, it's just this earth element, water, fire, air. And what is the internal earth element? It's everything that's hard. What's the internal water element? It's everything that is liquidous, everything that has this kind of fluid nature to it. What is the heat element internally? It's everything that's hot. And what is the wind? It's everything that's moving, like the breath. And the external element is just all those elements on the external level. Then what Sāriputta does is zoom out again, and he makes this statement, which is that one who sees dependent origination sees the Dhamma, and one who sees the Dhamma sees dependent origination. So this is a different window here on iDhamma, but we'll go into dependent origination. And then he talks about how when there's consciousness and these six sense bases, so eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, so consciousness, sense bases, and something to be seen, heard, smells, taste, touch. Then there's this contact. And then from that, when there is attachment, then we suffer. So going back to the Four Noble Truths, the origin of suffering in this sutta is described as the desire, indulgence, inclination, and holding based on these five aggregates affected by clinging. Is the origin of suffering, and the cessation of suffering he describes as, in this sutta, the removal of desire and lust, the abandonment of desire and lust for these five aggregates affected by clinging is the cessation of suffering. So these are the nested dhammas, and you can go through this website and just explore more for yourself, but that's the basic outline. So a great website. Ajahn, what do you find interesting about this sutta?
This sutta really points to the holographic nature of the teaching. And for those who don't know, we did look this up actually, you and I, but a hologram, each because it takes light from many different angles, creating an interference pattern. Each piece of a hologram displays the whole image just from different angles. So within each kind of section, it's like splintering or shattering a mirror. Each section of the mirror still has an image of the whole room just from a different kind of angle. And similarly with the Buddha's teaching, you really see how each thing Venerable Sāriputta zooms in on, he can kind of move through it into these other elements of the teaching. So Four Noble Truths, First Noble Truth, Five Aggregates of Clinging, Form, the elements, and then this brilliant move from the elements into equanimity, and then how he moves back out and touches into the six sense bases, how they fit into dependent origination, then analyzing how they lead to the five aggregates manifesting in each moment. It's a virtuoso performance by kind of a genius, the likes of which I think humanity's been blessed by very few people with a mind like that, imbued with insight such as his. And I wish the sutta was more well known because of this amazing kind of performance of just showing how the Dhamma is like, it's one of the reasons I think that people arguing there wasn't a historical Buddha, just they haven't read deeply enough to understand there's no way I think that the Dhamma could be so cohesive, so coherent, like a gem, where you really see how each element feeds into these others. And in some ways, you can think of it as a hyperlinked text where each kind of concept links to all these others. And I think it's one of the reasons sutta-based teachings are so rich, is because each kind of thing you move into just suddenly expands out into this wide vista of all these other elements of experience, some of which aren't logically inferable or available to logical inference. Like, why would focusing on the elements be conducive to equipoise and metta? And yet, experientially, it's quite true that if you're, confronted with kind of unpleasant words, bringing yourself into the body and really kind of moving away from the concept of self through the elemental contemplations just has this effect of grounding and space, creating more space. And just to point out how not only does he point out how all the Buddha's teachings are contained in these Four Noble Truths, but how all wholesome Dhammas are. And in some sense, I think the Buddha's dispensation is a metta teaching, M-E-T-A, where all these other kind of systems of thought and training can be looked at through the lens of Buddhism. In some systems, maybe you think keeping the name of a certain deity in mind brings the mind to union with them. But in a Buddhist framing, we just think, okay, like keeping the mind with a wholesome object leads to unification of heart and samadhi. Ajahn, what about you? What did you find interesting in this?
Just rereading it, there's this fascinating exposition on the elements, the external elements, and it really is just like an image from 2,600 years ago about external climate change. You've got earthquakes, the earth element getting disturbed, you've got the water element getting disturbed with typhoons and floods, and then water level going down or water level rising. You've got external fire element going up and down, so external climate change. But really the Buddha, it's not just philosophy, it's all about what's practical. And here he brings it to the internal climate change, what can be considered as internal climate change, like noticing how sounds, just physical things in our environment, contact in the environment, when it comes in contact to the body, like you were saying, like unwelcome words, someone says something we don't like, that's just sound waves hitting my eardrum. And the Buddha says you can reflect in this way and you just realize, oh, the sound is dependently arisen, and the ear is dependently arisen. Mm-hmm. And I don't have to get angry about this to bring up equanimity. And then he harkens back, as you said, actually giving a shout out to the simile of the saw, Majjhima number 21, which we've already gone over. And then he says that, you just as a new spouse going to live in the house of their in-laws would have this sense of samvega, or sense of carefulness, utter carefulness and almost fear, based on this person, so too someone, when you see this internal climate change, this kind of arising of anger come up in response to just something I heard. you should raise this sense of samvega, or, wow, I really need to take care of this. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to respond. So, yeah, I think highlighting our responses are dependent on just these facts of nature, and we don't have to respond to them. We can bring up more equanimity.
So, Ajahn, what is the word of the week?
The word of the week is Arya Satya, that is the noble truth. So Satya is truth, and Arya is noble. Noble in the sense of enduring, not changing, and noble in the sense that one who practices these Four Noble Truths will become a noble person. So.
Wonderful. And we hope everyone has a good week. We'll see you next week for Majjhima Nikaya 29. And if you're joining us on Sunday, we'll see you on Zoom in about 5 seconds.
All right.